the award of the best single malt in the world this year. And it's quite important. We're not actually kind of blowing our torch here. It's quite an important statement because it's the second time we've won this award in 4 years. And in the last 15, 20 years, I think it's the first time we are the only Scottish company to actually have won this award. So it brings me back to, what is the philosophy? What is the thinking behind Glenallachie? What are we trying to achieve? And the reality is that when I sold, or was obliged to sell the previous companies, there was always, I always felt I still had something to achieve. And surprisingly, when Glenallachie became available, it was a very simple conversation with the MD of Chivas. He said, "Would you like to buy?" I said, "Sure, we'll buy." And that's how easy the transaction was. But I kind of knew what we were buying. I knew the quality of the spirit. I had worked a lot of Glenallachie in actual blending processes. But then the challenge for buying a mature distillery is, the challenge is defining who you want to be going forward. And it was always in our mind that we wanted Glenallachie to be represented as a single malt that had a significant sherry influence in the whole experience. And that was a challenge because here we had inherited inventory which probably was not in the right kind of wood that we wanted it to be in. And the other challenge is going forward in making the new fill, deciding the kind of fermentation we wanted. And that was a big change actually, and I'll come back to that. But deciding who we wanted, what is Glenallachie going to be going forward, what we're creating. And we knew we were going to be using some very, very rich wood like sherry casks, like Oloroso, PX, virgin oak casks. I mean, intensely delivering a lot of really, really rich flavours. So we had to create a new fill spirit that had muscularity. So we moved the cut down a little bit, maybe even more than just a little bit, so that we had more higher alcohols in the spirit that could actually cope with the experience it was going to have in the wood. And that was, in many ways, that was defining who we wanted to be. But the bigger challenge was actually how we managed the mature inventory that we inherited. And most of it was certainly in very good oak casks, but most of it was in fresh American barrels. And we had the challenge over a 7-year period of taking it from these casks, something like 50, 60,000 casks into sherry casks. And as I say, it's taken us 7 years to get there. And the challenge, and it's a big challenge, is to actually merge the new identity and creating the identity for the existing inventory and make them merge relatively seamlessly. I have to say, I would say that we've owned the distillery now for almost 8 years. I think that we have actually, we've probably achieved 90% of where we want to be. In many ways, I would say probably my job is completed, which means instead of going to work at the distillery at 5 o'clock in the morning, I can now go to the distillery at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. But importantly, the 12-year-old represents a point in time. It's a great reflection on the kind of vision we had for the distillery, what we wanted to achieve for the personality and the DNA of Glenallachie. The 12-year-old is classically represents where we want to be. The kind of anatomy of the product is it started its life in fresh American barrels, and a lot of the buzzwords and the flavour words you'll hear at tastings and also you'll hear today are things like butterscotch, vanilla, honey, and that's the kind of flavour profile that comes from the first experience in the American barrels. And these, remember, are toasted and charred, so there's a big influence in the molecular structure of the cask. So when you're toasting and heating the cask, the celluloses break down into sugars, and then when you char the cask, these sugars become caramelized and treacle. So you're going to get things like honey, butterscotch, toffee. These are the notes that come from the American cask. The Oloroso and the sherry casks are much more interesting. They give another level of flavour contribution. The PX is a sweeter sherry. It gives you, we call it in Scotland, we call it Christmas cake, but it'd be dates, figs, and the Oloroso, which is the king of sherry casks, is going to give you dark chocolate and mocha. And all of these flavours, the flavour levels, are locked into this 12-year-old, and it's at 46%. It's non-chill filtered, it's natural colour, and I recommend it to you. Cheers.
Cheers.
I have one thing. If there is anyone who don't like to end up in social media or something, because, yeah,
It's okay.
yeah, but forever hold your peace, because you can't come later and say I don't want to be in the, because there will be like hundreds of pictures shown everywhere around the country. So if
Are you sure?
have a second thought, no.
Fantastic journey, and every day is an exciting day. You go and look at something different. What's happening? What are we going to do here? And you'll see one new release today, and it's sensational. But I'm just trying to say that we have a freedom that perhaps the big companies don't allow themselves to have. They are so constrained with how much equity they have locked into these really, really important, fabulously important brands, but they don't have the freedom to experiment outside of this kind of confine.
Thank you.
Who is deciding in your company? Is it you?
Everything.
I expected that.
But at the end of the day, responsibility and accountability are not detachable. They are together. So if you make a mistake, you're on the button, mate.
But I can understand, compared to a big company, a lot of people should be involved. But here you can fulfill, as I can understand, your dream of making whiskey.
Oh, listen, it's a team dream. I'm being a little bit facetious, but in terms of the whiskey choices, how we create the whiskey, that's my call. And I have to say, we've got a good team up there. The distillery manager is incredibly safe hands. Alan McConaughey. Alan's worked with me and for me for about 25 years. He knows exactly what kind of mood I'm in.
Is he still working for you now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He decided that he had enough of Brown Foreman, and he decided to come back. So, but good team. Look, the kind of quality responsibility is mine. The rest of the responsibility resides with logistics and sales and whatever. I just focus on the whiskey.
So if it's a success, it's up because of Billy. If it's a failure, it's someone else.
You see, that's the division of responsibility and accountability. They come together.
I use that all the time.
Please, friends, we move to the tasting room.
Okay, are we settled? Listen, actually, it's a really interesting tasting, and it tells. It's a big tasting, and it's going to be quite a long tasting, so be ready. But it actually tells the evolution of how how Glenallachie has developed as a brand, as a concept, and indeed how the world sees the brand. So we started with the 12-year-old, and we're moving on to the 15. And the 15, I suppose if somebody asked me which would I prefer, probably I would favour the 15-year-old, only because I'm a kind of I'm a nut for aged whiskey, and on that point I need to talk about the aging process in whiskey. There is a kind of feeling abroad in some parts of our industry that says age doesn't matter. Age is unbelievably important to the development of the flavour profiles in whiskey. And it's not without coincidence that for a long time the Shiva strapline was age matters until it didn't. And it didn't matter because suddenly there was a shortage of older whiskey. But the reality is that age is incredibly important in the process and the evolution of flavour. Are there any chemists in the room today? Okay. Then at least you will definitely understand some of the kind of... When you fill the process is, the reality is that 70% of the flavour in a whiskey or any kind of brown spirit will come from the cask. If you're using rich casks, it will come from the extraction process in the cask, or indeed the reactions that take place in the whiskey during the long period of maturation. When we put whiskey into the wood, normally it will be around about 63%, maybe a little bit lower, but every year the whiskey will lose 0.4% of alcohol. So there's a thing called solution characteristic. And what that means is that at 60%, let's say, the whiskey's talking to the cask and saying, there are some molecules in here that I can comfortably come into solution at this strength. And as the strength falls, it keeps talking and it brings other flavour components into the solution. And this only happens over the aging process. And once these new flavours are in solution, they then start talking to each other in the whiskey solution, and we get things like oxidation, particularly esterification happening. And if you have got a whiskey and you don't know the age of the whiskey and you're tasting pineapple, be reassured you're drinking quite an old whiskey. And it comes from a component called ethyl octanoate, which is a long chain ester. And that delivers things like pineapple, mango, orchard fruit. So these don't happen in younger whiskies. These happen in older whiskies. So the complexity of flavours that you get from an older whiskey are significantly more interesting than you'll get from a younger whiskey. So that's the kind of science lesson over. On the 15-year-old, interesting cask composition. It's a combination of PX, about 60%, Oloroso, about 30%. And then there's some virgin oak and some wine casks, red wine casks. Why do we use red wine casks? We don't expect a lot of flavour contribution from the red wine. What we're trying to achieve with red wine is we want some tannins in the whiskey, because it doesn't give you a flavour profile, but it gives you a thicker mouthfeel. The PX, as I said in the other room, the PX will give you Christmas cake, dates and figs. The Oloroso, again, the king of sherries, or perhaps it's the queen of sherries in respect to the ladies, gives you dark chocolate, mocha, wonderful notes. And the virgin oak gives you delivery of spices. It'll give you honey, vanilla, butterscotch. It'll give you nutmeg, cinnamon. And these are words that we bandy around. You wonder why are we talking about these? There is sound chemical reason why these flavours are in the whiskey. And I hope when you taste this one, you will be able to tell your mind and your palate saying, I'm actually picking up some of these things, and on a really good day, you'll be able to pick them up. Good luck. Okay. Yeah. So while you're tasting, the one thing I omitted to say, this distillery, when we acquired it's the big distillery, it can produce about 4 million litres. The one thing we did immediately is we wanted to move from conventional short-term fermentation, which would be about 56 hours. We wanted to move to long-term fermentation. It would be about 140, 160 hours. And we're confident that this kind of much more passive approach to making whiskey is going to deliver at the fermentation stage, is going to give us the opportunity to get additional flavour components locked into the wash. We're looking for a bit more esterification, a little bit more oxidation, maybe oxidising the aldehydes to acids and then further esterification. But we're trying to bolt in all the kind of things that perhaps our forefathers did 100 years ago. And that, the demand in the industry has meant, you make the fermentation as short as possible. We're kind of changing that pattern. We're going to make it as long as possible and try and get the maximum delivery of flavour, experience, feeling out of the whole process. So listen, questions are not a problem, as I said. There are no stupid questions, only stupid answers.
How long fermentation do you have on?
This will be about 140, 150 hours. But that's not, you won't be tasting that yet. That will come from the period after we started production.
Is it actually possible to have too long fermentation time?
The answer to that is no, with a caveat. The problem with long fermentation that it invites bacteria into the wash, and some of that bacteria can be unwelcome, and it can create hygiene difficulties in the spirit. So your hygiene program, the washing of the lines and of the vats, the whole process has to be absolutely pristine. So long fermentation shouldn't be a problem if your hygiene management is perfect.
Do you get any taste from the any essence from the fermentation?
Do we get taste?
Esters, like
Yes.
like you get in your when you brew beer, like that.
Yes, of course. And that's, you get that in the natural process of fermentation. And our kind of, the challenge for us with long fermentation is to try and capture even more of that. And then that goes on to the kind of distillery technician. He has to better understand at what stage all of the components are in the cut. Where are they? The esters will be up at the top. And how we actually manage the cut is, we actually don't check the strength at the start. We will check and we will add, we take a couple of samples and we will add water. And initially it'll be cloudy because it's the kind of aldehydes that are coming out of solution. Once we get to the point where we add water at the front of the distillation and it becomes clear, then we start the distillation. And then we want to, as we go down, we want to capture the esters. Then we want to capture the higher alcohols like N-propanol, butanol, isoamyl. And these are really important, although they probably don't mean an awful lot to you, but in terms of actually a lot of the subsequent development of flavours in the liquid and cask, these are really, really important components. So listen, we're on the case. We try to be on the case at every stage of the process, including the fermentation. Then another very, very important aspect of whisky production is the malted barley varietal. And I can remember as a young blender chemist with Ballantyne's, and this goes back 50 years, we used a barley variety called Golden Promise. And the yield we would get would be about 395 litres of alcohol per tonne of malted barley. And the balance was beautiful. It was wonderful barley, it gave you a great delivery. Today, we're using a varietal called Laureate, and we're getting something like 425 litres. Now, we think there's something going wrong here. You know, we're not over impressed with high yield. We're much more interested in quality. The one thing in this industry, if I could retrace my steps, is that we would go back to direct contact with farmers and telling them, we want you to grow Golden Promise. The difficulty is that, are there any Diageo or Chivas employees here today? The difficulty is that these two companies dictate what happens. They want yield. Our take on this is, if we get another 25 litres of alcohol, we're going to use it in 15 years' time. What does it really matter? It's stupid. So one of the things that we're trying to do is engage with our local farmers and saying, look, we want you to grow Golden Promise. And we promise we'll give you more money per tonne than the big boys will give you. But you'll become part of the community. And that's the direction we're on.
I use the Golden Promise when I brew beer.
You use Golden Promise. Well, it's natural for you because it's got more nitrogen. It works nicely for you, but it also worked nicely for us. We're too big, we're too small to dictate what happens in the big picture, But if we go to local farmers and we can get arrangements, that'll be a nice step forward. And we've started that process. Anybody else?
That's the way you describe it now, the same way as Gimmick you and Rue Club did work several years ago to have contracts with local farmers around Rue Club.
And listen, and Jim did it, would do it for two reasons. It was easier for him to get it locally rather than ship it on to the island. And he could also influence the choice of barley varietal. And you know, Jim was clever. He was on the case. Actually, any thoughts on the whiskey? Sorry.
You mentioned earlier when you're choosing cask, some casks are good for 10 years, some are for 15 years. How can you tell?
We can tell by following them religiously. We sample furiously. You know, I go to the distillery 2 days a week and probably looking on a weekly basis, looking at something like 200, 300, 400 samples, checking, and we will tag their development. And what would happen is, we know the casks that might actually create a problem. One of these would be chinkapin. It's got some quite intense flavours. What we would do is, if it got to the point where we felt it was overcooking, we would take it out of that and put it into a second fill chinkapin or a less active cask, just to slow the process down. But we're on the case, you know, you can't guess what's happening. You know, you could put, for example, you could take two casks, absolutely the same spirit in them, absolutely the same oak genus, the same type of cask, put them in just against each other in a warehouse. They won't behave the same way. It's such a natural process. There's so many natural things happening. But listen, we do a lot of work. We're constantly following the development of the casks. And what that allows us to do is identify if there's a problem, but also allows us to identify this is a premium time for this to go, or if we don't go now, you have to wait another 5 years.
I have a good story about that, about sampling.
Oh.
I was at Glenallachie not long after you bought it, before you got any visitor centre and so on, with 4 other guys, and we were in the warehouse with Lindsay, and there was 2 guys picking samples for you. And the guys asked me, how often do you taste the casks? So, if you ask Billy, every week. They were quite fed up with getting round and getting sample. Listen, in truth, for the warehouse men, it's hard. Sampling is hard. They would rather be rolling casks. Sampling is the challenge. But, you know, it's our DNA. It's important that we know how the quality is developing. It's important. And we experiment with a lot of different styles of cask, frankly new to the industry. So we're creating some new history with things like Colombian oak and Mongolian oak. You might ask, why would we choose to use Mongolian oak? The driving reason is that we're trying to get something that's very similar in delivery and performance to Mizunara casks. And I mentioned earlier, these casks cost £3,500 each. And we figure out that Mongolian casks are in the same latitude as Hokkaido. By and large, they have the same climatic conditions. And so we thought, and the genus, by and large, is the same oak genus. We figured out there's a chance here they could be, if not the same, they're in the same orbit. And we're kind of reassured now because we know that Yamazaki are now using Mongolian oak casks. So we kind of think we're ahead of the game here. And more importantly, what do you think of the 15-year-old? Thumbs up? That'll do.
You're often described as the master of sourcing high quality casks. Can you describe that a bit more? How do you get hold of all those good casks?
Well, I think you have to be brave, and you have to be, you know, a lot of the casks, chinkapin,
was never used in our industry until we started using it. Now it's actually quite commonly used. And we go and look. Interestingly, the one oak genus we haven't used it yet is Swedish oak. We think, I was talking with, I think it was Michael earlier, we think Swedish and Scottish oak is quite similar. Swedish, we know, is quite spicy. Scottish virgin oak is also quite spicy, very difficult to work with. And my suspicion would be that Swedish oak is also quite difficult to work with. Short trees, lots of knots, coopers hate them.
So just a couple of whiskies to try today, so can probably move on to the 18 if you're very good. You can always come back to these
yeah.
whiskies. And given that we have an extensive lineup, just pace yourself. Now that you're all experts, but yeah, it's going to be a long mid-day. So this will be your number 2 on the map. And that's the 18 years old.
Listen, just following on what Antea said, look, prudence would suggest pace yourself. On the other hand, many years ago, I was fortunate to be working with one of the great blenders, historical blenders, a guy called Jack Gowdy, who was an incredible blender at Ballantyne's. In the days when single malt, frankly, was a low-key issue. It was all about blended whiskey. Jack was, first of all, he was a cracking blender. He was a terrific blender. He's a lot older than me. And up until about 11 o'clock in the morning, he was a fantastic boss. So let's look at the 18-year-old. The theme is the same. The kind of cask we're using are the same. One difference, the PX is about 50, the Oloroso is about 30%, and the virgin oak is 20%. So we don't have any red wine in here. Strength of, we're bottling at 46. It's quite important we bottle everything at 46 or higher. And the reason is that it's, in terms of malt whiskey, if you're not chill filtering, it's a very stable strength, 46 and above. And if you put a bottle into the fridge and expose it to really cold temperature, it won't actually throw a precipitate and it won't throw a haze. So it's a comfortable, it's a good strength to bottle at. The other thing we do in terms of preparing a bottling is that we actually don't add the water to the whiskey. We calculate how much water we need to add to make the reduction. We then put the water in the vat and we add the whiskey to the water. And it's a technique, or it's a process that the cognac industry have used for years. And I would suspect that a long time ago the whiskey industry would have done something similar, but the bigger companies have forgotten. It was actually quite important to do that, because essentially what is happening is that you're creating an artificial situation where when you put the first part of the whiskey into the water, you actually encourage it to throw a haze or a precipitate. And then when you add the rest of the whiskey, it goes back into solution, and it's convinced from that point on that I'm comfortable in here, so I'll stay in here. So on the, I'm sorry, I should be looking at, listen, it's kind of, again, it's an evolution. The characteristics you're looking for here on the nose, indeed on the palate, the PX is going to give you Christmas cake, dates, figs, probably in a more refined way. As it moves to 18-year-old, other things are happening to polish off the experience. The Oloroso, again, I refer to the King or indeed the Queen of Sherries, is going to give you wonderful delivery of dark chocolate mocha. And the history of being in the fresh the American barrels is going to give you the spices like the first maturation experience will give you nutmeg, cinnamon, ginger, even hints of orange peel. It's a wonderful combination of flavours, and it's one that should be sipped. Don't add water, don't add ice. These products deserve better than that.
We can some almond as well.
I'm sorry?
You can find some almond as well in some nuttiness.
Nuttiness, nutmeg, yeah, almonds, maybe even some marzipan.
Yeah.
So many of you have tried the 18 years old before. Have you seen any changes in this product since you tried it first? Has it developed for you? Yeah.
It's developed better. I remember I tried Glenallachie for the first time at Magnus' place before Selected Malts had it. We tried the 18 and the 25 years old, and it's completely different from that time. You remember, Magnus, when you had that tasting?
That was like 7 years ago when the first bottles came out. Of course, the journey to today has been that you have time, because some of them have only been like 6 months, a year in the sherry cask, and now they had several years.
And indeed, what is coming through will have much longer.
Yeah.
And listen, that point in the acquisition was the start of the race.
Yeah.
And it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Definitely. But it's really fun to have tried the first things that came out,
Yeah.
and follow on the journey that you had so far. And as you said, you still have 10% more, because when we come to, 5-6 years from now, when the first 12-year-old from your distillation is coming out, maybe 100% of 12-year-old from your, that will be again slightly different from
I can tell you it will be very interesting. Listen, and that's a very exciting part of the evolution of any brand when it has a change of ownership, and especially if the blender has got the kind of influence to put into the future of the journey. As I said earlier, you know, it's difficult for big companies with established brands to give blenders the freedom to do that kind of thing. But if you're starting, you know, if the whole process is about continuous evolution, it's so exciting. And I can tell you that if I could wave a wand, I would love to take some of the stuff that we produced from late 2017 to the market tomorrow or quite soon, but not yet. Not yet. Because there will be a point in the journey where it will. And I have to say, when I say it, look, I think we've still got 10% to achieve. When we achieve that 10%, there will still be 10% to achieve. What do you think? You guys happy?
So we're getting towards the first half of the tasting, so that after the 10 years old, we just get a break in between. You can have your sandwich ready, then you can have a bit of a special break, let's say.
We take that break. Of course, Antea, we will. And I can say, just to let Bill rest for 1 minute, I will also take up with Magnus Fagerström again. We have told this story a lot of times, but we have worked with Bill and the guys with Glenallachie for nearly 5 years now, and it all started up with Magnus, of course. Magnus is the reason of many things in this house. I promise you. Not everything, but many things. So we really want to thank Magnus, of course, because he's got this connection with Julia Buchan, working at Glenallachie, and they are looking for a distributor in Sweden. And Magnus just phoned Patrick there, And I get a bit mad because I said we are two little guys to have our own brand, not our own brand, to have the agentur of another brand. So I was a bit scary, and it's a long story that we're not taking today. I think everybody heard it before. But actually we get over to you and visit you, and so nearly 5 years, and this autumn I think it's exactly 5 years since we start working with you guys.
Yeah.
So we are very pleased, Magnus, that you set us in together with this guy. And as I told Billy yesterday, we have worked with you 5 years, and can we work with you 5 more years? And you said yesterday, maybe longer than that.
Well, we'd like to think so.
We should. Sorry for interrupting.
So, what next? 10-year-old. So, moving from left to right, third one is the Glenallachie 10-year-old cask strength. Again, the cask composition is in the same, it's similar. It's PX is 45, Oloroso is a bit higher, it's 35%. The Virgin is 15%, and there is some red wine in here. Again, it's a less old whiskey at 10. So we're looking to enhance the body and the mouthfeel. Batch 14, is it batch 14?
That's 12.
Batch 12.
The latest one.
Strength?
59.7 on this one. So slightly higher than the previous one. But say it's, you know, we've compared them in the office, and it's very hard to tell the difference between the strength. You can tell the difference between the influence, as Billy was saying, because this one has a little bit less PX. But yeah, definitely some very well integrated 59.7%.
Anyway, the flavour profile is similar. You know, the PX will give you the same kind of experience. It will give you the Christmas cake, dates, figs, the Oloroso, dark chocolate and mocha, and the Virgin Oak will give you the kind of levels of butterscotch, vanilla, honey. Also the kind of spicy notes, nutmeg and cinnamon. But importantly, I mean, this is a high strength. And one of the challenges putting together a cask strength experience is it's got to be comfortable in the mouth. There's no point in actually making it 59.3% just to say it's a 59.3%. It's got to be an experience that when you drink it, it doesn't actually overwhelm your mouth and say, I need some water. This should be comfortable in the palate. And I suppose the one promise that we as a team have made to ourselves is that anything we put in the bottle should be comfortable to drink without adding water, and especially without adding ice. And why am I so anti-ice? Maybe I'm just being Richard Patterson in disguise. But there is a truth. The ice tends to anaesthetise your palate. So actually, it means that you can't actually, your flavour palate is actually less effective if you have ice in the drink. So don't add ice. And I have to say, please don't add water to this. You may, of course, if you wish, add water later, but at least give it an opportunity. Experience this strength because it's comfortable.
There's a very big difference between batch 11 and this batch 12. So this is much better, I think.
I can't offer an opinion in that.
I think there will be difference.
What I will say is that tasting, if we're going to do tasting work or nosing work, we will always do it at 9 o'clock in the morning, somewhere around about 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. It's when your brain is at its brightest, if it's ever going to be bright. It's when your palate is at its cleanest. And you don't really want to be stressed. You don't want to be fighting with anything. You want to have a clear vision of what's happening. And that's the best time to actually do pilot studies, actually assess what the samples are doing, how they're behaving. We would have prepared the previous batch and we would have been comfortable with the development. As I said earlier, our ambition is that every kind of major release we make is better than the last one. And so my challenge to you is to do this on another day.
Can I have a question about that? Because I think that for me, the 10-year-old is the most obvious example of what you always talk about. It's not pursuing consistency instead of being better each batch. And looking back at the first 2 batches, there was, I guess, almost only bourbon casks. And then in number 3 something happened, and then you went on and you added stuff. And for me it's...
Number 3 might have been a spiritual experience.
Yeah, almost. And going forward now, when you have 13 next ones.
You know, I think, Patrick, our expectation is that whatever we're working with now, we know that the history of the maturation periods are better than when we inherited the distillery, and it's better than what were working with in the earlier days. And it's why we're so confident. We're now in a period of quality evolution where we think everything is exactly where we want it to be or better. But we also know the younger stuff that we're working with that we have actually distilled and made ourselves. We know that when this comes to market, it will be super, 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 super good. Anyway, please tell me nobody's added water yet. Are there any guilty parties in the room?
While you're drinking this one, me and Patrick and Emil just going to prepare a little extra moment, Billy. You don't know it, but we know it.
Oh.
It's time. It's so heavy.
Well done.
And I think we do it right here in the room. I'm going to put on some light. It's looking like we're in a discotheque or something.
Can we use this table maybe? Thanks.
And because there's so many hardcore fans here today, we couldn't resist to take with us the number 35.
Wow.
And especially for the moment that Bill is here in Varberg, in our house. So of course we're going to try the 35-year-old today. I know that 2 guys here have tried it, because these were the 2 guys that bought 1 bottle each. The other 2 bottles we have here. So it's only came 4 bottles to Sweden. And Billy, if you want to tell us the notes, you can have your own little book here that you have written. So please, don't feel embarrassed. I think you have wrote that. Yeah.
Listen, the problem is, Michael, I'm not sure I could read my own writing.
It's a really Fort Knox.
Don't drop it, please.
No. We promise you.
We thought about actually fill one with water and just drop it in.
You can fill on the box around the table. Take it easy. I'm going to use it when I die to put in the oven.
Ashes.
I got it pure. I poured 450 glass yesterday on Golden Day, so I'm.
Michael, let me. This was my thinking at the time. It's a small bottling. We had 3 Pedro Jimenez casks and 1 Oloroso cask. On the nose, the Pedro Jimenez, I was picking up. Writing's complicated. Raisins, demerara sugar, and mocha. On the taste, poached plums, muscovado sugar, heather honey. Billy, your writing is appalling. What we were looking for in the Oloroso, and we were looking at these casks separately before we actually.
Oh my God.
Before. So on the Oloroso cask, we said orange zest, mocha, and some red berries on the nose. On the taste, cinnamon, dried red berries, dark chocolate, and nutmeg. And that was when we were talking in the lab. It was probably early in the morning. The nose and the palate were in pretty good shape. And on the virgin oak, which I think there was one cask of virgin, citrus and pineapple in the nose, cinnamon, mocha, orchard fruits. On the taste, heather honey, cloves, treacle, nutmeg, and even hints of pomegranate. And that's a kind of going back to the point where some of these very unusual fruit notes in long maturation develop. So pomegranate would be along with pineapple and mango. Listen, 35-year-old in a cask is always unpredictable. There's never any certainty. The thing I've said in the past, that in whiskey, there are no certainties in terms of old maturation, but there are some wonderful surprises.
Anyone wants to taste? No? Yeah. I think Patrick will...
Yes.
Really, how many bottles was it coming? I don't remember actually. Antea knows.
Antea knows.
So we are in the 2,500, if I'm not mistaken.
2000, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a taste here. Was it good news, Ben?
Very good news.
It's an amazing
whiskey. Yeah.
She's my daughter.
She told me.
Yeah. You think she's looked like me? No. Nicer.
She's much more beautiful.
Thank you for that, William. Och billig fart. Bra. Say snart to you with this one. It's a kind of a high life moment for us here in Varberg. We don't have it so fun even every day. But this one we will have.
You know, it's interesting, Michael, I don't get the opportunity often to drink from the actual final bottled product. I'm normally sampling from the cask. It's lunch. Sensational.
Vem sa det?
So much.
We thought this was so amazing, so I think everyone stands up and really thank Selected Malts and Bill Walker for this amazing brand.
What a wonderful thing to do. Thank you very much.
Lunch.
Thank you.
Is one of the few opportunities that we had to open at 35 years old so far. So it's been very, very nice of you guys to keep it aside for this special occasion. Right.
Very thoughtful.
Thanks.
Now everything slows down now.
Hey, you didn't drop it.
No.
For real. you.
Wasn't it really a really good one? My father used to do that every Christmas. He looks always get in the Christmas tree and shock everybody. So I think I got a moment there.
In Swedish, skål.
Shotta inte den nu mycket Mark.
Jag tänker, kommer man hit varje fredag får man en 13 morgon. Då kommer jag varje fredag. Gör du det?
Well, there's obviously this release was something that we launched last year, and it was the first 35 years old release of Glenallachie, the oldest whiskey ever released so far. This year, though, there'll be something new coming. Which we're hoping that this time would be something that we can bring into Sweden for sure. Yes.
This is 35 years old, but Billy, have you had a chance to tweak it something? Because you wasn't when the liquid was done.
No, listen, we've done quite a lot of work, wood management in this. I mean, these, as I said earlier, you know, older whiskey, there's always uncertainty about the process of old whiskey maturing. And one of the big problems is that you run out of time in terms of the strength. This is very comfortable, it's behaved actually remarkably well. But if you go below 40%, you lose the definition of Scotch whisky. As I also said earlier, you know, that there's no certainties. As the whisky gets older, of course, the maturation process is incredibly important in terms of developing the complexity and the kind of variety of flavours that you have. And this is a wonderful whisky, intense, complex. There are no certainties, but there are some wonderful surprises. And this is, for me, this is a surprise. But if we had brought this to the market in the original casks, it would have been a totally different product. And we spent a lot of work getting this in the right kind of wood for the right kind of period of time. We also have some older whiskey. We have some 1978 whiskey, not a lot. And our ambition is that we can encourage it to stay above 40% until it's 50. And I think that's about it's 1978, so it would be 2028 we'd bring out as a 50-year-old. Not just, I mean, it would be a small release, but it's really just to say Glenallachie have done a 50-year-old. It's a kind of milestone in our kind of journey along the way and our relationship with the consumer. So we follow that very carefully, and I can tell you that with 4 casks, 4 puncheons, 3 of them are at 46%, and 1 of them is at 44.2. So we're very happy that there's going to be some very interesting release. The shame is that we won't be able to internationalise it, but just to be able to say we released a 50-year-old, that would give us a nice feeling.
I'm sorry to say, but you lost a few CL of one of those casks 5 years ago.
I know. I know. And Lindsay was put in the bad box for that.
Billy, when you say they were in puncheons, are they sherry puncheons or are you going to re-rack them to sherry?
No, these have been in sherry casks from birth. And some of the sherry casks, we're not sure if they are PX or Oloroso. I think they were Solera casks, and one of them is in a PX. Should be interesting.
Have you tried them recently?
Of course.
Every week.
I did explain that. My experiences are never from the kind of bottlings, they're always from the cask. Don't tell the revenue.
What is your experience now when you try it from the bottle?
Listen, it meets all the expectations I have. It's natural. I mean, when I say I don't take it from the bottle, what's in the barrel is the same as what's in the bottle, because we don't filter it, we don't chill it, we don't do anything to it. Chuffed. It's a Scottish word. Chuffed. It's a kind of, you know, and I can't take a lot of credit for this. The previous distillers clearly had the patience to run it, but they didn't have the vision to say it needs to come out of these casks and go into other casks and give it a new life, give it some fresh thinking what it can do here. And the important thing, a lot of things, you know, we talk about sherry casks are interesting in a sense. They bring some wonderful delivery to flavour delivery to the whiskey, but they're not. Sherry casks are only toasted. They're not charred, so you can leave the whiskey in sherry casks for such a long period of time, and know that it's taking a bit of time for it to infiltrate into actually the whiskey getting into the cask. So these are the things you learn. The longer you're in this industry, the longer you do it. It comes as almost second hat that we know this can happen, and let's make the most of it. Look, when you wake up in the morning and the challenge is to go and look at 100 samples, how awful.
If you want some help to do it, you can call me.
You'd be very welcome. Interestingly, and I say this with some reservation, the female palate is much more sensitive than the male palate. And I know that in the Johnny Walker kind of sensory panels, it's heavily dominated by women. We don't tell people an awful lot about this, but it's also the same in perfumery. I'm not going to say any more.
Är han collector så han är också...
Oh, it's up to Michael.
I think we do
What did you break? Yeah.
we do the soup directly now.
Okay.
The full break and the longer break, and then we take the little talk in there. So I think we keep up heat. So it's okay.
Yeah.
Sure. What? Just continue. So listen, I'm really reluctant to pull you away from the 35-year-old, but you can park it and return to it in some moments in the future. But we're going to move on to the rest of the tasting. This is a big tasting. This is a big tasting. So the next four are actually interesting. They're single casks, and why do we choose? What is the determinant when we decide we're going to make this a single cask? And this goes back to when we do all these incredible number of samplings. And what we're looking for is we want to eliminate casks that are a little bit disappointing. So we'll have another journey for them. We'll decide to do something else with them. But sometimes when we're doing the evaluation, something comes out as being extraordinarily interesting, different, not necessarily much better from the same kind of flavour profile. This is different, and this is worthy of being exposed or delivered as a single cask. And that's kind of the basis on which we select casks. It's quite important also that we look at a whole variety of different wood styles to showcase what happens in each of these single casks. So the first one I think we're going to look at is, if my sight is correct, it's a single cask 2013 Oloroso Hogshead. I can tell you, I think we tasted this last night as well. This one is to die for. And remarkably, this was exclusively for you guys, yeah.
Yeah, it was for Lars, his
Yeah.
fan group. He actually cooked it himself.
I know we were talking about that earlier, and well done, Lars. This is definitely this is a 5-star. It was, and remarkably, the strength is 63.2%, and that's high. We would normally, 2013, we would expect that to be a little bit lower in strength. So it's behaved kind of differently. So that tells me this is interesting. What's going on here? So what you should be tasting, Oloroso, single cask, 63. Don't add water, please. Give it a chance. Give it a chance. 63.2% on the nose. It's a little bit more challenging on the nose. It's more difficult to pick out some of the characteristics. When you add water, if indeed you want to add water, it tends to release some of the flavour components. You can better recognise them. But importantly on the nose, there's no spirit influence at all. And what you would expect on the palate is loads, I mean, sheds and sheds of dark chocolate and mocha and other layers. Underneath that there'll be some vanilla, honey scotch, bunny. And also there'll be some nutmeg, some cinnamon, some orange peel. That's what you should be saying to your palate. Am I picking these things out, or is this idiot up front who's talking, is he talking a lot of tribe? But actually, if your palate's alive and fresh, you will be picking up some of this. And I get to suppose in many ways when we have these experiences, when you say to somebody, it's eucalyptus, the mind is saying to the palate, what does that mean? Does it maybe mean pine wood? Does it mean sandalwood? Does it mean something else? So actually words don't mean an awful lot. It only means a lot if your mind is already tuned to understanding what these things taste like and you've had the experience before. But listen, we talked about this one for about 24 hours now. This, as they would say in Scotland, is a belter.
Lars, when comes number 2?
Yeah, you can see, you know.
Expecting that.
Yeah.
Well, there's no pressure, but soon.
Good.
I know something that you don't. Ingo, I know something that you don't.
Bill, I assume soon is earlier for you than for Lars, maybe.
No, but we're going to meet in the middle. And my middle is much nearer me.
Lars, can you tell about the selection? Because the selection were done in the warehouse.
Yes, I was in the warehouse, and I think it was trying out like 7 different casks and all type of things like bourbon and
I think
Shinkapin was there also, and was there a rye even?
Yes.
Rye cask.
Yep.
And virgin oak was there, and Oloroso, and I was going through all these, and I know Lindsay was standing and Antea was standing on the wall, and I was speaking through these, and everybody knows me, I like sherry. So when I stuck my nose into this one, I just got hanging there and looked up at Lindsay, and Lindsay was laughing back to me. And you know what it was. So
no, it was like a child on Christmas Eve.
yeah, it was amazing, and I'm really thankful for having this opportunity to select the cask. It was amazing.
Nice cask.
So,
Yeah.
Good job. Isn't it any more coming up on your front?
Yeah, how much should we say?
Teas maybe?
Yeah, that will be coming up. This fall, stay tuned, and it will happen something this fall.
We are there.
Yeah.
Lars, no pressure then. So generally, what's your thoughts on this one? High strength?
Very nice.
Comfortable in the palate.
It's a lot of spiciness.
Yeah.
You feel the spiciness more than that.
I think, I'm not sure that there's actually more, but I think at this high strength, it's a bit influences. Before.
Really comfortable. How many of you are part of Lars's group? There's a hand down. There's a hand down. And how many of you have managed to get a bottle of it?
Yes.
Well done. Well done. And have you tried it before? So was it your first time trying this one, or have you opened that bottle?
I have opened the bottle.
Yeah.
Tasted it. Together with another Glenallachie that was released for Swedish Whiskey Federation
Yes.
this year as well.
Yes.
So I tried them together to immediate taste. Just two of them. So it was really nice and
very different ones as well.
Which one?
which one?
Which one was the best?
Which one
Which
was
one was
the
the best? Lars is asking me.
I feel a bit of competition here.
Which one did you prefer? This or the other one?
I think you might be off the friends list.
Big difference between them, more different than I thought it should be, really. I really like this one because I think it was the spiciness in this that wasn't in the other one. The other one is more cherry, more almonds, more marzipan than this one. So it depends what you would like,
Sure.
really.
Absolutely.
So what end of the flavor palette. But I really enjoyed this one. So
The Swedish Whiskey Federation was a PX cask.
yes, it was a PX
Yeah.
cask. So it was quite different, but it was nice to have them because they were coming similar types and trying to look at both of the bottles.
There's a quote from a very famous prince who came from quite near here called Hamlet. His comment on life was, "There is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so."
What I like about this is that it's a, for me it's a typical Oloroso cask. But I also, when you have that first sip and it cleans out with Oloroso taste, you can feel the DNA of the Glenallachie.
Yeah.
That's what I like about this.
Yeah, that's good.
Lars, you're a poet.
But actually, you've actually hit the nub on the head of the challenge for a blender. That's exactly how it should be. That all of the streams of flavour complexity should be comfortable in the palate. Nothing should overwhelm one of the other flavours, and that's the challenge.
I think we should take the opportunity to actually tell that there are several people here who have been involved in choosing casks through the years.
Yeah.
We got Henrik from Alta Magazine. We got Smad. The guys, Bernd was with us to choose one for, what's that? Was Oros or something?
And we got Magnus choose a couple
Magnus
of
had
casks,
choose a couple of them.
Magnus, the finger of suspicion.
Yeah. Did we?
Well, I went for, one was virgin oak and one was bourbon. So not the typical Glenallachie.
No,
Yes,
but
I wanted something different for my club.
Interesting.
Because, yeah, I love these whiskies, the cherry ones, but to have something that is different from the same distillery that you usually get a sherry cask from, to find a bourbon cask from that distillery, then the DNA of the distillery comes even clearer.
Sure.
I think these bottles are really fun to have. It's independent bottlers to try and Macallan 100% bourbon cask or Glenboyne 100% bourbon cask. It's so interesting.
I can tell you, unfortunately, as you go forward in life, that you will never see Glenallachie 2017 and younger ever being bottled by an independent bottler. And the reason is we have never sold a cask to any third party or any other distillery.
Good.
No.
Then we can get cask for free.
The reason is that once you release a cask to a third party, you lose control of the.
Sorry.
It is a workout.
I thought it was mine. You lose control of the personality of the whiskey, and people can do things with your whiskey that you would prefer them not to do. And even my son, who's trying very hard to persuade me to supply him with some Glenallachie casks, not a chance.
I like that. I would send him an email saying, hey, can you get me an Glenallachie cask?
I said, do you know what he'll say? You've been talking to my old man.
And I just want to make clear for this, you don't have to drink up everything in this last 4 months because it's really strong. So we're going to put up your glasses and put the food in front of that, so you don't have to drink it up all because it's going to not be good if you do. So you can have some left in the glasses, and you're coming back after the break later on that. Just so that no Bill, so don't drink.
So are we going to continue with...
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys, the next single cask is, interestingly, it's Chinkopin. It's a relatively small cask. 2008, which I think personally was a great year for production at Glenallachie. Strength is 58.1. So what are we looking for here? This cask will have been originated its life in a fresh American barrel. So you're going to get a relatively narrow flavour profile from that. You're going to get honey, vanilla, butterscotch, some spices. Where do the spices come from? The spices actually come when we char the casks. They start breaking down the tannins and the lignans, and you get cinnamon, you get cloves, you get nutmeg, orange peel. That's where the spices come from. So there's no great surprise that you pick up significant spices from American barrels, or indeed the Chinkopin cask also is it's a virgin oak cask, medium toasted, medium charred, and the characteristics that we are expecting, the unique characteristics that are coming from the Chinkopin will be notes of anise, notes of licorice, as well as the layers of butterscotch and honey and the spices. The unique contribution to the Chinkopin is anise and licorice. These can overcook, so you wouldn't want it to be in a Chinkopin cask for more than 4 years. Then you would, if it was the point where it was too much, we would take it out of that cask and put it into a relatively, let's say, a less quality cask to slow the process down. So that's what you should expect from this. In terms of strength, comfortable in the palate. We know it's comfortable in the palate. I chose it, and enjoy. I was asked a question last night, and I don't mean this is not. It's not a. What I'm about to say is not a criticism. The question was, what do I think of Japanese whiskey? I think they make very good whiskey, the Japanese, but it's very, very narrow flavour profile, and very focused on vanilla, honey, and butterscotch, and they do it well, I have to say. The Mizunara casks bring things like a little bit of incense, a little bit of sandalwood. But you're not getting a broad flavour spectrum from Japanese whiskey. But they make good whiskey, and they make it in a good way. They're very disciplined, conform to all the laws. But they've got a wee journey yet to catch up with Scotch whisky. Cheers.
Oh, I remember one of the Shinkapin cask that was released here in Sweden was one of the sort of like fastest selling single cask ever released. Yeah.
It's, I think I'm really a sucker for Shinkapin. I like it.
So do I.
I like it, Billy.
It's.
But you have a very international palate.
I think it was kind of an exotic thing that we talked really about this new oak style that you, Billy, brought into attention actually with this.
I was explaining to Lars earlier about, you know, we're doing a lot of interesting. I said earlier, one of the great advantages of being a private company is you can do things. Sometimes we do stupid things, sometimes less stupid. But we're looking at right now. We got the cooperage to make a combination of Scottish virgin oak and French virgin oak casks. So what would happen is one stave would be Scottish, one would be French, all around the barrel, and we kind of medium toast, medium charred. And we thought this is interesting because French is it's not over sweet. It's got tannins. Scottish oak is very spicy, a little bit Swedish, and it's also got the kind of characteristics you would expect from virgin. And we've transferred some whiskey that's been in Oloroso casks into these casks, and I can tell you they've been there for only 3 months. Spectacular, absolutely. And these are the kind of interesting things that we can do and we can showcase and bring to the market. And if it's, let's say it's 2,000 cases internationally, worldwide, if you went to one of the big boys, they would say, "You stupid, 2,000 cases? Don't be ridiculous." But we can do that, and we can actually engage. You guys are pretty informed drinkers, you understand whiskey. So we like bringing things in front of you, different things, challenging things. And these are not, I can tell you this one isn't a taste challenge because it's fantastic, but that'll come sometime in a year or maybe 18 months. Just a thought.
That's what we like.
So what do you think about this one? Yeah, I agree. It's behaved very well.
It's a lot of candy.
Yes.
Billy, were you the first to use Shinkapin in Scotch whisky?
I think yes, definitely. But the Bourbon family were nervous about, and still are nervous about Shinkapin.
But in Scotland.
Oh, Scotland
did you
definitely.
get it from bourbon or did you get it from wine? The idea.
I got it from conversations with some interesting cooperages who were kind of encouraging me to look at, what do you think? Give it a chance. And there's other ones like Gariana, an American oak. I can tell you, we've had it in Gariana cask for about 2 years now. Sensational, you know. But because brands are so entrenched, they won't try these things. They don't know where the journey's going. But all we know is that it's like when you get on a train. If you're in a rush and you get on a train, you're not quite sure if you're on the scenic train or the express train. And that's the kind of journey we're on with a lot of these different styles of casks. Where's it going? But we need to be clever enough, we need to be alert enough to be developing, understanding how they're developing, how quickly, or indeed how slowly they're developing. But it's fun, it's fantastic, it's fantastically interesting to get. We're also looking at some, I said earlier, some Andean Colombian oak. Can you imagine trying to get into the country something from Colombia with barrels? The revenue and immigration, they were all over these casks. I said, don't worry, we're clean. But they were worried.
I'm sure they checked. I'm sure
We told them it was chalk. It was chalk. No, but that kind of stuff. But it's great, and these casks are fantastic as well. So listen, we're looking at oak wood from all over the world. Sadly, we haven't done Swedish yet, but it's in the plan. We think it's very close to Scottish. But anyway.
How many types do you think we have in the warehouse of different virgin oaks?
Probably north of 8.
The chinkapin, I read a little bit about it, and it has a little bit of DNA from the walnut tree, I think, or was it chestnut?
Chestnut.
Sorry, chestnut tree. The leaves looks like the chestnuts.
Yeah.
And
but you know, it's difficult. The Scottish Whisky Association are incredible policemen. They would have been all over chinkapin like a rash. We want to see that this is definitely, and it's definitely oak. But I was talking with Lars there, if we had a freedom to choose a different style of wood to make cask, the choice would be chestnut.
Can you taste the chestnut whiskey from Sweden?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Did you try some chestnut whiskey from Sweden?
We're not allowed to use we're not allowed to legally use chestnuts.
No, I know, you don't, but
No.
we can in Sweden.
You're allowed to. I have it. Yeah, I've tried it, and some of the there are different characteristics.
Yes.
I think it's more nutty, as you might expect, and it's sweeter. But it's good wood, and the other one we'd like to use would be cherry wood. That would be interesting. But look, it's surmising. It's drifting into the realms of that ain't going to happen, mate. So just go on with your life.
But I promise you, later on, you and me go out to our warehouse and you can have some chestnut.
Okay.
So don't bother.
Okay.
There was a German guy, the one who did the fish key, if you heard about that.
No, I have heard about that.
2-year-old Brooklyn and put it into an old cask that had fish in it. Call it fish key. It was really salty, really horrible. And he did a cherry cask with C. And it was so much grain feel from the whiskey. I don't know which whiskey had it.
But it might.
It was Brooklyn again, and he just tried to see out. It was not a good experiment.
I don't mean to. It sounds as if the whiskey was thin. It didn't have enough legs to cope with the style of the wood. And that's, I mean, you have to marry the kind of personality of the whiskey with whatever style of wood you're going to use to mature it. Yeah.
The Icelandic has used birch wood. It was not good either.
It's not good either. But I think fishki was a bad idea.
Oh, absolutely horrible.
Yes.
2 points in the 100 scale.
Yeah. I think you were generous.
Yes, I was.
So not minus points.
Yeah, went below, went underground.
I think the Watermanias had 1 to 10 that was serving me this may cause physical minus there.
No, that was poor. It's a bad idea.
Very.
Well,
We're still in 2008, and now we're going to the Muscatel.
so this is the second last, I think the second last one we're going to taste formally. I think there's one more. By that time, somebody else may have to lead the proceedings. 2008, working with a really, really interesting fortified wine, Muscatel Barrique. They're fantastic casks. We don't use them often enough. They're difficult to get. Strength is 56.8, comfortable. the kind of prominent feature you're going to get from the Muscatel cask is a kind of red berry, cherry style of note. Again, these casks haven't been charred, so there's a slow absorption into the wood. So you can leave the whiskey in these Muscatel casks for quite a long time. They evolve beautifully. But the underlying flavour kind of profile is again butterscotch, vanilla, honey, spices. But the Muscatel introduce these red berry notes, orchard fruit notes, kind of stewed cherry notes, plums. And I have to say, we don't release enough of these for Muscatel, Madeira. I also think, I don't know if you've tasted our port wine release. Port wines are wonderful casks to work with. Beautiful, beautiful vintage casks. But enjoy the Muscatel. It's you won't see a lot of Glenallachie and Muscatel. Maybe in the future. Enjoy.
The first note for this one is like sugar covered bonbon.
Bomb. Yeah.
It's sort of like candy fruitiness. The sugar covered candies, bonbons we get in Europe, which are like just round, very, very sweet candies. And it's basically just sugar with a little bit of sort of like either fruit or Parma violet, sort of like notes in it. That's exactly what it is. Loads of fruitiness, loads of floral.
You know, interesting, there's a really nice bite to this whiskey.
Yeah.
Crunchy.
It was, sorry to interrupt you, really. I think it went sold out in a couple of hours when we released it in Sweden.
Yeah. It's nice.
We do have a lot of Simcoe, but this one I think it was one of the fastest selling out.
We were actually sitting and looking at the numbers because this was a reverie.
Yeah.
So we had this was a part when we had Juliet was with us in Stockholm. And we were sitting at the cafe looking at the numbers, you know, counting down like this.
Fantastic.
It took like 2 hours.
But you know,
now I can see why.
It's remarkable. It is remarkable how different it can be. You know, you're using the same kind of base whiskey, and how you can put it in a different flavour journey altogether.
This one was smooth. Yeah.
Just like you left.
Yeah.
But it's got a crunchy bite. It's asking a question. I think the one that probably gives me the best kind of outcome is Sauternes. Difficult to get, but by and large, the wineries that manage casks are very aware of how important the cask is to the process. So the cask you get from Sauternes wineries are extremely good. The problem is that nowadays Sauternes is so expensive to buy that the sales are dropping, and so the number of casks that they're emptying is getting less and less. So they're much more difficult to source. Great cask to work with. If I had the red wines are more challenging because differentiating the red wines it's a little bit. You know, we've got Chateau Latour, we've got Mouton, and they behave very well, and they develop nicely. But I'm struggling sometimes to understand what am I really getting from these casks. Champagne casks, excellent. It's another kind of wine vintage that understands the importance of that the cask actually makes in the process. Getting these is also quite difficult. The Champagne people don't, indeed the Sauternes people don't like these casks getting released from their circle. I remember it very, in fact, what's the very famous Sauternes? Chateau de Chem. So it's Chateau de Chem casks, and I told the marketing team and the for God's sake, don't mention Chateau de Chem. So saw the bottling, the back label, ex Chateau de Cairn. Listen, we had about 1,000 legal writs from this company saying everything, not just don't do it again, everything has to be off the shelf. Difficult. Naughty.
Well, it's actually funny that you say Satan.
Why is funny that way?
Yeah, it's funny because everybody here should know that in the end of August you should have a look at the Systembolaget. Yeah, maybe in a web release or something, I don't know.
And it may be justice at the end. So thank you for keeping one for us people.
You're very welcome.
Several years ago, we had a Moscatel in your wine cost series. I think it was the first wine cost series.
Yes.
At 11 years old.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
I think all of that series was fantastic, but it was difficult to connect with the consumer. Maybe it was too soon. Maybe we were making life too complicated in the range. But some of the, I mean, the Moscatel's great. The Madeira, some of the Madeira casks are wonderful. Port, excellent. Tawny Port, excellent.
I have a couple of bottles of that Moscatel 11 years old back home. And every time I serve it to one of my friends who don't actually like whiskey, they say it's amazing.
Well, yeah, I agree. We don't. I think we kind of get stage fright with the wine series, but we will recover and go back to them.
And all I don't forget, I know where you stay.
The last one. Listen, we're not. I think the only casks that we have kind of chosen from the forest are Mongolian casks. And what, I mean, you might think that wood selection and indeed cask making is a relatively simple process, but our demands are extremely, our standards are very high. So we don't, when we say to the cooperatives, look, we want you to get some Colombian wood, but you're going to have to keep it for 4 years and air dry it naturally. And some of them will say, it's a bit long. So we have to pay. So we pay for the wood, we pay for the cask up front. Why do we go on air dried? And again, it's a kind of technical discussion, but what happens with, if you dry it naturally, air dry it naturally, while you're drying, it's also raining, and the raining process washes out some of the tannins, so it reduces some of the tannin level. But it also encourages bugs and bacteria to start working on the wood. So you get some enzyme activity that starts to break down some of the structure of the wood. I don't mean it becomes weaker, it just means that it becomes more porous, that some of the celluloses and the other components start to be converted into interesting extractable components. So the journey is really from day one, from the tree all the way through to going to the bottom. There's something that we can do. We can make an input to control the outcome and improve what we're expecting from the cask and indeed from the maturation process. Did that answer the question? Okay. But that's a fun part of it, you know, getting control right from the very start, from the wood being cut. American oak, for example, is interesting in a sense that it is less absorbent than French oak, but it has more what we call whiskey lactone, so it's got more coconut, more vanilla in it. French oak's got more tannin. So we know it's balancing out all of these things in terms of the plans that you're going to do, what you're going to lay down, how it's going to mature, how long is it going to mature for. But the wood is so important. You can make, it's a standard, you can make wonderful new fill. If you put it into poor wood, you're on a dead-end journey. You can make poor new fill and make it into good wood, you're on a dead-end journey. You need to make good new fill and put it into good wood. then you've got a chance.
Has there been any change from the cooperage in the way they work in that sense? Giving you a wider selection of casks or wood types, or have they always been very good and the distilleries are more eager to try different stuff? Or
It's a good question. You know, we have a wonderful relationship with Speyside Cooperage. Anything interesting they have, they give us first offer. You might ask why, but the reason is that they know that we'll do something interesting with it and we'll give it a chance. So yeah, listen, it's just from day one, it's fun. And as I said earlier, listen, there are no certainties in anything we do, but there's some wonderful outcomes. Sure. Yeah.
This one is 2006. That was bottled in 2021. 59.5%.
Is it minus bottle?
This one was selected for Sweden. So it's 20, yes, Varberg cask, so 2021.
Den ni tog.
Yeah.
Jag valde
So
Virgin
was
Oak
a
och
share
tog
venture?
Virgin för det var så bra, det gick inte att släppa.
Was it a share venture between you two?
Yeah. For once I had the first choice, and I picked the Virgin Oak, and Patty was really happy about this one. He said, we'll not let that one go. If you take the Virgin Oak, we take the bourbon. So we got choosing about Sweden.
Yeah, it was too good to
leave it behind. I understand.
Good choice. Very, very, I was going to say, simple choice. And in truth, I mean simple choice. With bourbon casks, you get what you pay for. And classically, you're going to get heaps of butterscotch, honey, vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg. That's a bourbon cask. And while the flavour profile is relatively narrow, you know what? It's a pretty good cask.
And I think that we had, it's not that we could, the selection was, we let Magnus choose first, but the thing was that at that part of time, we have done, like, we did Madeira, we did both PX and also we thought that a lot of our customers was asking for Glenallachie as it is, like, at least the minimum of cask influence, of course, that you talk about bourbon is a less cask influence. So people were talking about that, and we said, okay, we need to choose a bourbon cask because we've done all the other stuff before.
A good choice.
So it came up to that when he chose the Virgin Oak, we said, yes, exactly. We get to choose the bourbon cask. Yeah.
So there is a kind of, though, Patrick, for us there was a kind of dilemma because this is a classic example of something that we have had no input into. You know, this is the legacy of the previous owners. And by the way, they've done a good job here. The next time we bring a bourbon cask to the market will represent who the new Glenallachie is.
Yeah.
And that's why we have been a little bit reluctant to bring 100% bourbon cask to the market up until now. 2 or 3 years from now, you will have a much more interesting choice. And I have to say, a much more interesting, maybe even better experience.
No, the thing is, I have to tell this story because the thing is that we asked Juliet for samples, and she said Virgin Oak. We had a couple of bourbon casks. We said we want a bourbon cask. We don't want it too old because we need to have the right price point for it, like 11 years old. And she said, "Oh, I don't have any." Because Billy filled them all into sherry casks. And we said, "Okay, everyone." Yes, everyone. And we said, okay, how do we do this? And she came back and said, okay, I find one. It was a 50-year-old. And this is it.
Yeah, it's
so,
good.
so you did a pretty good job with filling it into sherry cask.
Yeah, look.
Our problem is our bourbon cask. The things that died away. So you didn't tell Billy about it.
Yeah.
No, I don't like my bourbon.
Listen, this is a good cask, and it represents everything is right in making the spirit and choosing the right cask. But we wanted to kind of, when we bring these next to the market, it will be 100% our impact on the distillery, our ownership, the things we've done, all the changes we've done. It will be 100% Glenallachie under the new ownership. That's the thinking.
Looking forward to that.
It won't disappoint.
New fills today. How much do you fill in bourbon cask today, and how much do you fill in other types of wood? From
Listen. The philosophy we have is we fill probably about 50% into fresh American barrels, bourbon, and the rest into sherry casks. That's just about probably the right mix. We don't.
Quite a few of these bourbon casks will later on be switched over to a sherry cask to have
the kind
those
of
words.
the kind of formula is that we would like it to be in bourbon barrels for a minimum of 4 years, and then we would move it into Oloroso, PX, Virgin, maybe some wine casks. But we know the contribution we want each of these casks to make. It's all about flavour building blocks. The first part of the flavour building is in the spirit, making sure that you've got the right kind of chemical composition, the right kind of components in the spirit. The second one is understanding what is the contribution of each style of cask. What's the contribution of bourbon cask? What's the contribution of virgin cask of various genuses? What's the contribution of the various sherries? And we've worked long enough now with Glenallachie to understand that to get the first building block is the spirit, to get the second building block, which is the contribution from the American barrels, 4 or 5 years maximum. And that gives us a nice kind of base of vanilla, honey, butterscotch, spices, nutmeg, cloves. And then the next part of the journey of flavour building is the sherry cask, PX and Oloroso. And another part of that is if we're looking, for example, if we say this is going to go to 15 or 21-year-old, then we'll put it into a bigger cask. If we're going to use it as a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old, we might put it into a hogshead. And that will, I'm not saying it gives you a faster delivery, but it does actually give you a faster delivery. So we're in control now. When we bought the distillery, we weren't in control. We knew how to control it and where the journey would take us. And it's taken 7 years, 8 years to get where we want to be. So Lindsay's, in some ways, Lindsay's job will get easier, but I promise you it will not be allowed.
If you don't mind, while you're enjoying the bourbon cask, I will start serving the last whiskey today. It's not a single cask, something that we've only just released in Sweden, and it sold out already, only after a few hours. So we'd like to share with you another bottle, and obviously we'll give the option, maybe get some more. Because it's teasing. If you like it, then you cannot buy it if you didn't manage. On the next one, well, there's a way for that. We'll make sure that these boys have your email addresses so that they can let you know when it's going live, so that you're starting a little bit sort of like a faster sort of like start. So for this one, and I will leave the word to Billy for that. It's a 2014 vintage, and it's a combination of Chincapin and Pedro Jimenez, which he decided to bottle it at cask strength at 57.8% alcohol. So if you can
Maybe
free
pour
at
up the
least,
first.
free at least one of the glasses, or if you've got the glass of the 35 years old which was empty, I will suggest you to rinse it, which is probably the case by now. Don't waste it, of course.
And I think Antea thought that you need another dram. The first 8 one wasn't enough, she was thinking actually, so I didn't know this at all, so she just surprised me.
I'm Italian, I give all the time.
But Billy, you can relax a little now. I took all day to yesterday, and I talk now, so after this tasting from the Sintis, we're gonna have a little thing out in the warehouse, not drinking thing out in the warehouse. I'm gonna show you our other warehouse. Men Billy kommer berätta lite grann om Mikkeltorp, alltså deras rökiga linje. Vi kommer gå runt och servera er antingen en Mikkeltorp Cherry One eller en Mikkeltorp Chinquapin. Så ni får välja vart det sker med kommer gå med varsin flaska. Återigen så rengör ni ett glas där. Ni kan använda det 35-årsglaset en gång till eller tredje gången.
Det kan man göra.
Vi kommer att servera. Vi bara dukat av. In 2 minutes we have clean up the table. And Patrick, they're going to choose if they want to try that coffee. And I can pour up the cherry one. So Emil, keep up cleaning up the table. And we are asking people if they want.
Jag tar Sinkapin.
Jajamän.
Ja, men då tar jag Cherry.
Bra, så det blir ojämnt.
Varannan.
Jag tar en skärning. Lite snarare nu.
Cherry. Ja, absolut. Kan du betala de där 7600 kronorna du är skyldig?
Kommer runt.
Det är den eller Cherry? Ni kan ju...
Vi kan ta den andra så
Lasse? Cherry? Sinkapin? Chinkapin? Cherry?
Jag tar också den.
Hingsten och och lite vatten. Alla tog ju
Rökigt. Kännerfott. Jajamän.
Vad har du för ppm på denna?
Han kommer berätta, men det är faktiskt 37 i drycken. Så det här är lite coolare. Alla andra mäter ju faktiskt i huset. Så att,
ja.
Lasse, ska du fick en Chinquapin. Jarek? När du har det. Jaha.
Chinkapin, Lasse.
Vad säger du? Har du den? Färdig?
Får du plats med dem, Susanne?
Jag har med min extra lås att göra ton.
Ja, men tur, nu har hon ju några samples sen.
Jag är trött.
Skicka glaset. Gör det. Gör det.
It's like waking up in the morning, you've still got a pulse. Very important. Anyway, it's been quite a long tasting, so we're moving into a much, not more interesting, but a very interesting new style of Glenallachie. It's called Michael Tor. And when I left the previous company, I had this irrational itch that I wanted to actually create a Speyside peated style of whisky. And we had time to think about it and what did we want to do. So we didn't want to create a style, a peated style that was traditional like an Islay whisky. Islay whisky classic is, of course, phenolic smoky, but it's also got some very kind of challenging, in my opinion, challenging medicinal notes like TCP. We wanted to exclude that part of the peated experience. So we decided we would use mainland peat from St Fergus peatery. And the difference is that I don't know if you've visited the island, but there are no trees on the island. So the peat is formed from the decomposition of heather and herbs and obviously seaweed, which gives it the kind of iodine notes in the Islay style of peat. On the mainland and close to where the distillery is, the peat is from the decomposition of trees, heathers and herbs and grasses, and that's what gives it a much sweeter note. Islay whisky is traditionally not known for being a sweet style of whisky. It's much more powerful, medicinal, smoky notes. What we were trying to generate here was a style of Speyside peat that was, it gave you the full smoky notes, the full phenolic notes, but it omitted the kind of medicinal, Islay traditional medicinal notes. So every year we have a campaign and we take control of the campaign. It's really important. We don't have our own malting, so we have a very good relationship with a local maltster. And so the challenge is to say to the peat supplier, we really need very, very wet peat because we don't use peat to dry the malted barley. All we're looking for from the peat contribution is a very, 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 very wet kind of steamy mist that's coming up into the kiln and being absorbed into the kernel of the malted barley. And we want that, we said we need that to happen for 2 or 3 days. We want to have phenols in the malted barley round about 120 ppm. If you can achieve that, we're on the right journey. And in terms of the distillation, we wanted to capture somewhere around about 35 ppm of phenol. So the challenge then for the distilling technician is you need to actually now start looking at where actually are the peat, where are these phenols located in the distillate cut. And that took a bit of time. We took our time to understand what was happening. So we made it, and we don't apologise now for bringing this to market as a 5-year-old. And we don't apologise for putting 5 on the label because we want to tell you exactly the truth of this experience. It's not a non-age statement, it's a 5-year-old peated experience. And this might surprise you for some people around the table, probably not, you probably know this, but if you really want a really intense peated experience, you should be drinking a peated product somewhere between 5 and 8 years. That's when the intensity of the peat is at its fullest. After 8 years, the peat influence in the whisky begins to dissipate, and over the next, if it's a 50-year-old, 20-year-old, it'll still be a wonderful product, but the actual influence of the peat will have faded significantly. So what you're going to taste today is there are 2 styles here. There's and these whiskies have been in the style of cask from birth. So you're going to taste the sherry one, or you're going to taste the chinkapin. I'm not trying to influence the direction in which you might have a preference, but my preference is a chinkapin. But that's not to say that the sherry disappoints, because it doesn't disappoint. And I would say in reality that Sherry and peat actually, they interface beautifully. They marry with each other really, really well. So what you will get with the sherry one is you will get loads, absolutely. Let me remind you again, these have not been in American bourbon casks. These have been in both from either sherry casks or chinkapin casks. The sherry casks will be loaded with chocolate, coffee, dates, figs. But in the background swirling around is this smoky influence, this phenolic, not medicinal, phenolic influence. On the chinkapin, I personally think the chinkapin works even better with peat. And what you're getting there is loads and loads of butterscotch, vanilla and honey, but it's also, the smokiness is not just infiltrating, it's full body presence. I'm not sure how to describe, I'm really not, I don't do a lot of peated tasting, so I'm not the best person to talk about it. I just, with this almost incredible itch that I had to make a Speyside peat that actually would impress the market and you could relate to. And listen, the bottling of 48%, taste it, enjoy the experience, and then we'll have a conversation of what do you think?
I have a question about it. Have you changed the cutting point when you are doing the destillated, or is it the same cutting point as the rest?
No, it's a different cutting point. The cutting point is a much lower finish. We take it much lower.
Because I know if you have right or wrong cutting point, you can decrease or increase the.
It will all depend where the phenols are residing, and they're lower in the distillate than the conventional non-peated distillation.
Are you experimenting with fermentation time also? Or
yeah, long fermentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
How many ppm?
It's about 52, 55 ppm.
In the malt or in the bottle?
Sorry, what's that?
The malt, in the malt ppm or in the bottle?
Well, that's in the bottle.
In the bottle?
Yeah, sure.
Intressant också, så har jag som kan mäta en ny flaska. Med
visst, och då har du ju den här sådana helt sjuka nivåerna. Det är helt ointressant. Det är ju flaskan.
Här är jättemycket eukalyps i slutet av när det är skärmt. Alltså det är kaffe, eukalyps,
because Billy has something to say, and we want to compare.
It's not so much what I want to say, it's kind of what I want to ask. And I know that, I know you were only given one experience. You either chose the Chinkapin or you chose the sherry. My interest really is, what do you think of each of them? What would be your preferred choice? Would it be Chinkapin or would it be sherry?
Sherry.
Sherry all the time. Miss Walker, I'm turning 50 this year, and I told my fiance that if someone asks what I want for a birthday present, I want the Chinkapin.
And she doesn't drink
I don't
whiskey.
drink, yes.
Listen, it's always good to hear that some people like sherry and some people like Chinkapin. My own preference is Chinkapin because I think it allows the peated dimensions to be better expressed, more powerfully expressed to the palate. But look, it's kind of, you guys are kind of an important audience because the direction in which we go, of course, depends on the preferences of the audience, and it's good to hear firsthand what people think about it. But importantly, it's a Speyside peated experience. It's something that doesn't happen or is not available terribly often. We think, and maybe this is a conceit on my part, but we've learned a lot with pilots in previous distilleries. We think this one's has worked out really, really well as well. But no matter which one you choose, it's worked out really well. And it's not an Islay that's set up. It's not a peated experience that's set up to compete with Islay. It's a Speyside experience that offers us an alternative peated style of whisky. And having said all of that, if you want to ask questions, terrific. But more importantly, flange and enjoy.
How long time you distill the peated one? How many weeks?
Sorry, I missed that.
How many weeks you produce the smoky one?
About 6 weeks of the year.
6 weeks.
Maybe 8. But it is important to recognise that the cask we use here, we've had the opportunity to use a cask at birth. So it's no double maturation here, it's been in these casks from day one. Come on guys, you're awful quiet now, let's have some questions.
One question please. Your bourbon barrels, do you source your barrels from just one producer, American bourbon? Or do you buy bourbon barrels from different?
We source our barrels based in one premise. The cask, when they're emptied, the cask mustn't be washed or steamed. They have to come naturally, having been emptied. So with guys like James Pepper, we use a lot of James Pepper casks. We don't use a lot of the big boys because they tend to water wash and So that was an easy question. How about a difficult one?
No one asked one.
How would you say, in terms of flavor, your new make compares to the old owner's new make in terms of flavor?
Our new make flavour is much bolder. It's much richer in flavour, and the reason is that we took the cut lower. So we were seeking. The previous distiller would probably be looking for maybe some N-propanol, some butanol. They wouldn't be looking for isoamyl alcohol in the distillate. We were looking for we want it to be beefy, because we know the experience is going to be in big, rich casks. So we want enough of these molecules, these big contributing molecules, to be in the spirit. And this gentleman asked me a very interesting question. Well, I think the question could be defined as, what is blending? Is it an art or a science? And after 50 years as a blender, it's difficult for me to say, because I'm a chemist. I trained as a chemist at Glasgow University. So my instinct and experience tells me it's an art. And it's all about understanding the things that you've locked away, the experiences you've locked away over a number of distilleries and over a number of years. But when you do the special things and it works out, the science will explain exactly why it happened. I do have to say the chicken fin's fantastic.
One guy there more thirsty than everyone else here.
You always are.
Ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Hand it over to the guy.
I thought it was you, Michael.
No.
We know him too.
No, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you, Billy and Antea, for coming here. Also for yesterday and the great trip we've had. And thank you to all that came out here today. And I hope you enjoyed what you have had today and the stories from Billy and all the joy we had here today. So on behalf of the team, Emil, Michael, thank you from our hearts.
Thank you very much. Replaying, or what do you say in Scottish?
No, it's time for you to ask all the questions you didn't dare to ask before.
From all of us to all of you, very big thank you for this day.
Yeah. Thank you. Feel free to take a trip out in the go out in the warehouse and do whatever
And
you
the
like.
fact is, me, Billy, Antea and Lars leaving in 45 minutes in a Chevrolet, or what was it? Cadillac. See you again, 45 minutes, then we'll disappear.
Just stay there so we can take a photo. I stop.
Ah, okay. And please don't hesitate to put it on Facebook and Instagram, okay? Even if we're going to have to pay you for that.
Tell the world.
Every day.